Hey everybody, welcome to Conscious Control, and today we're going to be talking about meditation in reference to the brain's networks, okay? So last video I talked a lot about the brain's networks. I went into a little bit of detail, and if you haven't seen that video yet, it would be very helpful for this video, so go ahead and click the pop-up so that you can watch that video first if this doesn't really make sense to you. Just to dive right in, meditation is a word to describe the practice of sitting in silence. However, there's many different styles of meditation. In some meditations, you're simply paying attention to your breath and observing any thoughts that come up. In others, you're focusing on mantras. Others are more similar to prayer. I don't really believe there's any right or wrong way to meditate necessarily, but the ways that you practice do have different effects on the brain. Because of this lack of consistency in different practices of meditation, it's pretty difficult to find solid neuroscience research on the effects of meditation. But if you know enough about the brain's networks and how they function and their roles in consciousness, you can kind of guess how the different styles of meditation techniques would yield different results. In the practice of conscious control, while meditating, our goal is to manipulate the 4 higher level brain networks in order to train them, train their relationships with each other, and get a specific outcome. Again, those 4 networks are your internal network, your control network, your salience network. Salience literally just means importance, and your intentional attention network. If you take the practice of mindfulness meditation, for example, which is what's taught in apps like Headspace and Calm and things like that, it's much of a more, I would say, modern practice of meditation. The general idea is that you sit in silence and pay attention to your breath and the present moment. Any thoughts or sensations that you pick up from the world around you, inside your body, etc., you're supposed to note those feelings, or in other words, become aware of them. And then after observing them without judgment, or becoming involved in the sensation, you return your attention to your breath as many times as your attention wanders during the course of the meditation. That's the basic idea. And it's meant to increase your overall awareness, calm you down, and also put a distance between you, like your first person observer, your essence as a human, and the thoughts and feelings that you as a human experience. Well, now let's think about it in terms of the brain's networks. The practice of mindfulness then is essentially to keep your control network active, while your salience network prioritizes both your breath and the present moment as the things that are important to give your attention to, meaning that your control network and your salience network must work together in order to do that. Then, to be able to actually allocate that attention, to give your attention to your breath, your intentional attention network, we call it the Ian network, comes into play. You and your control network decided to coordinate the other 2 networks, being your salience network and your Ian network, to give your attention to your breath and keep it there for as long as possible, because that's what's important in that moment. But here's the catch. Eventually, your control network will, ironically and unavoidably, lose control. Eventually, your internal network will spark a thought, or your sensory motor network will sense a feeling in your body or something that pulls your attention away. It could take 3 seconds, it could take 20 seconds, it could take a minute, but it will happen. Your mind will wander during meditation. The moment that it does, you're taught to become aware of the place that it wandered to observe that process, and then to move your attention back to the breath. But again, the quote, move your attention back to your breath, can also be described as reactivating your control network to prioritize your breath as what needs to be given attention, and then to allocate that attention accordingly using your Ian network. You do this over and over and over again until the meditation's done. That is, in and of itself, a workout for your brain. You're training your mind to be able to sustain the use of your control network and your salience network and your Ian network without being interrupted. In the process, you're also increasing the connections between those 3 networks. You're strengthening their bond, and you're giving your mind this sense of muscle memory for this specific skill. But why is it so effective? Why do we train it in that way during meditation? Because people who invented meditation didn't know about the brain's networks. They didn't know that that's what they were doing. They were just sitting in silence. And the thing about meditation is, I believe in this concept called time permanence. Loosely, the idea of time permanence basically means that the length of time that an idea lasts, because change is the only constant, right? Like everything degrades. If you don't maintenance a building, other than the freaking pyramids, everything degrades or changes in time. So if something lasts through time, then it's more valid, right? Like alligators have been the exact same for however many 100 million years. Clearly it works. They're doing all right. If meditation didn't work, if meditation didn't have a purpose, somebody would have gotten up over the last 2,000 years and said, you guys are just sitting down in silence for no reason. Clearly there's value, but why? They didn't know that this was working out the brain's network. So why is this so valuable? What is the driving mechanism that training your mind in this way does? The answer comes back to the idea that no matter what, eventually the mind will wander for whatever reason, whether it's because change is the only constant, or because humans were simply meant to think, or because on a societal level we forgot how to cope with consciousness in today's age. The modern person's mind does far more thinking on accident than it does on purpose, undeniably. You see, the internal network is originally called the default mode network. It's responsible for thought and mind wandering and other things like that, keywords being default mode. And unfortunately, there's only a finite amount of attention available in the brain. When you do start mind wandering and you do start paying attention to a thought as opposed to the breath, your attention moves from one towards the other in percentages, keywords being as opposed to. If when you first sat down, you decided to give all of your attention to your breath, and in that first moment that you made that decision, you have 100% of your attention on your breath, the moment a thought pops up, that 100% went down to 60% instantly, at best. The problem is that this shift of attention is almost never intentional. It happens on accident. It happens without your control. It happens without you even noticing most of the time. That's why I say your mind will wander undeniably. But most of the times that this happens is in real life. It's not in meditation. It happens when you're reading and you didn't understand the sentence that you just read and have to go back. It happens when you're driving and you're thinking about something, so you didn't hear the song that just played, or you missed your turn, or you rear-ended somebody because you didn't slam on the brakes. It happens when you're studying and you look down at your phone and then you look back up and it's 20 minutes later. In life, so often your attention is being siphoned away from the present moment, from the task in front of you, and into your head. And what you're left with is an incapable autopilot mode, a split mind where neither side is really accomplishing anything. You can't truly multitask. You can only switch from one to the other. Not to mention the fact that, as I said in my last video on the brain's networks, most mental health disorders are ones in which the internal network is identifiably overactive and irregulated, and the control network is identifiably underactive and ineffective. So when we train the brain in this way in meditation, that's why it's so important. You're training your mind, establishing a relationship between your control network and the rest of your brain, like your salience network, your Ian network, and even to become aware of when your sensory motor network or your internal network distracts you, but you're also controlling your internal network. You're restricting it in a way. And by doing that, you're establishing a relationship between your internal network and your control network. And overall, you're just being intentional about what you want to give your attention to. And in modern society, there's so much to give your attention to, more than ever in history, that actually choosing what you are giving your attention to is so important, and it's only becoming more important. If you've happened to find this video, you've heard people talk about intention, attention, discipline of mind, being present, being aware. You've heard these things a lot, and me too, and that's not a coincidence, guys. But conscious control is about not stopping there. It's not just about limiting your internal network's influence or strengthening your control network or controlling where your attention goes to. It's about allocating your mind's resources, all of those resources, on purpose as opposed to on accident. Sometimes it's important to think, to reflect, to process, and strategize for the future. Sometimes it's important to shut all of that off completely and just be present and do what you have to do. The question is, can you do each of those on purpose? Can you choose which times are right for each process? And can you be aware when those choices aren't being made on purpose, they're being made on accident? It's not easy, but meditation is how we train the brain's networks so that we can better practice conscious control. Because the reality is conscious control is just the name. The reality is this is the skill of being a human, and it takes practice.